Tomorrow the bushes would be stripped of their berries, but today they were abundant and blooming. From where Brontë stood, naked at the window ledge of the dormitory's topmost story, he could spy on the gardener clipping away at the stems of a tree. He'd been observing the man's laboured reach towards every branch, the length of his torso, the nod of his head with every snip, inadvertently mirroring this man's posture as his own fingers dug into the sill's grooves. Brontë held himself out for one last glimpse of his surroundings. The woods on the left, the hills on the right, the pipes trailing the crumbling walls of the school's east court. All the while he was doing sums in his head. Below, the gardener descended the ladder and raised his sleeves to gather the foliage that had fallen into a heap at the base of the trunk. But captured by birdsong, he looked up to the building's eaves. What did he see there? What did he make of the lone figure framed by the square lattice window, shoulders bare and pearlescent, with hair loose and coiling down sharp rung like collarbones, a flat chest exposed? An androgynous statue, or a careless young woman trapped in an all-boys boarding school? A schoolteacher, perhaps, there through the holidays. The gardener moved to get a better look when, "Ah, Christ!" He tripped on a branch, falling to his knees. Above this scene, Brontë stepped back and drew the window shut, having finally decided. Upon arriving in Cambridge, he would take a taxi from the train station to the address on the envelope, a certain Greenwood Manor, which sounded very grand. Google Maps estimated a near 2-hour walk to the manor, marked by a red pinpoint, and the weather forecast threatened the usual early September drizzle, so there was no chance of walking. He couldn't show up to his new place of employment drenched and smelling of sweat. What would his employer and new pupil think of him then? He had to make a good first impression. The television flickered scenes from Merchant Ivory as he dressed. The boys with whom he used to share these quarters had long since returned home for the summer holidays and were due back in the coming days. The place stood barren, no trace of character or belongings left behind except his own, most of which had already been packed away. He could only carry so much, and the remaining boxes would come to him at a later date, set aside and taped as they were, in the furthermost corner of the room. Inside them were an assortment of clothes alongside his most prized possessions, sets of books by the Brontë sisters, a collection of Austen novels, those of Hardy, Forster, Woolf and Shelley, all of them collected, over the course of his life, from the High Street's second-hand bookstore, accompanying him through his years, like a friend. He opened them up again and again for comfort. He'd highlighted his favourite passages, written notes to himself in the margins, and learnt to turn his favourite quotes, "Reader, I married him," into a digital scroll of black calligraphy which he and thousands of others would post and share across their social media channels. His most cherished book, a hardback edition of Jane Eyre with foiled spine, lithograph illustrations, and a ribbon to mark his progress, was comfortably tucked away in the bag he'd be taking with him. He fixed his hair, a bobby pin stuck between his teeth as he angled another in before applying a little bit of mascara and eyeliner. When it smudged, he wiped it away and applied it again with a steadier hand. But it was no use. He couldn't get the flick right. He stopped, shut the compact mirror, threw it into the open bag, and turned to watch the screen, comforted by its misty feel, the light it threw across the room, and the soundtrack muffled by aged speakers. The film had played to his favourite part, a yellow-green poppy field pockmarked red, the display of wild barley and Italian countryside, and those two people who should not have been together by matter of convention, coming together almost in celebration, in tandem with Brondt's defiance of what some might call normal. For times had not changed. Boundaries continued to exist, and a child born in possession of an external appendage, or lack thereof, must be either one thing or another. As someone assigned male but who came to be fond of primarily feminine clothing in his early adolescence, this was not a truth Brontë had been born into. It had been an otherwise uneventful Friday evening when Brontë stumbled upon Judith Butler's theory of gender performativity on the internet, and such power did he find in those words, where performance was no longer a thing ascribed to the arts, but a behaviour in which we are all complicit.